the shoreline zoning ordinance, here's the floodplain management one. Put those to a vote and work on the others as you have time.
No, I know, and actually, for the record, Paula, actually during quite a bit of that time, there was a big spot in the middle there when Paula was quite sick, you know, and she really put a lot of time into it that she probably shouldn't have. You know, we even went down and worked in Paula's kitchen, you know, because they just painted this room, and actually it was smelly to me too, but she had a rough time there, so, but she still worked hard to get this stuff done. So, I mean, I do think that, you know, as much as we disagree about a couple odds and ends, she deserves a lot of credit for continuing to stick with these projects, you know, throughout all these years.
Yeah, so, has anyone else got any other?
But I don't know how to spread it out. I honestly don't. If Dave actually brought your exact question up back in January, and I thought it could be done, but by the time we got into the end of February, it just didn't seem to be able to work again.
I mean, I stood up in June of 2010 and told people, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Adopt this ordinance with its lumps and bumps and stuff, and I regret that I did that. Well, and I'm not going to sit and not say my piece at this point.
Yeah, we have it for, well then, yeah, well, we would have had like a wind project in here with no ordinance. That would have been not that great. So,
how many parts of this are you fixing other than the wind? Does she need to
quite a bit.
She does.
In section 1, it's not very much. That kind of is like the overall planning thing.
Cindy, did you go over there with camera there?
I think she's asked a simple question. I got it. So she's not asking more questions. She just wanted to know sections.
No, what I was saying is, if you're going to rewrite a whole ordinance, then you present the whole ordinance. If you're going to amend a previous ordinance, then you put forth the amendments. You don't separate the sections.
It's rewritten, the whole thing.
Right, so you have to present it as an ordinance.
And that's because we discovered problems, not just in this section, we discovered problems with all kinds of parts.
If you're rewriting the whole thing, you're going to present the whole thing.
And I have to say, in regard to one part of it, there are problems with the wind ordinance. And I will tell you right now, half the problems of the wind ordinance, and I was part of it, probably as much as anyone, are because we actually tried to, how can I put it, cater to as much as possible address every issue that the people who were against wind farms brought up. And in so doing, we created a monster because we created parts that were impossible simply because we were trying to satisfy a group that will not be satisfied. I'll put it that bluntly.
I thought what I was...
Oh, good.
I have to do this because I'm tired of hearing about... When we adopted the comprehensive plan, these were on the select board: Brian Melvin, Ed Beauchamp, Jerry Freeman, David Stearns, John Center. On the planning board, Gerald Foster, David Bryant, Bob DeShane. Now, if you think those people sat by and let us do something really weird with that comp plan, that's
the list.
That's who, we had joint meetings and everybody did it together, including Rep. We didn't do it in the middle of the night in some cave somewhere.
Yeah, I remember these people.
Now, if you think that Jerry Freeman and Bob DeShane sat back and let us run the show, you didn't know nothing.
That wasn't the implication. It's just that the staff moved in and out fairly regularly over time. It just took a long time to get it done. It's hard to maintain the public interest, and then it got voted in by a small group at a public meeting. I think was the end result, and they didn't have a big meeting for big support, which is unfortunate.
Paula, can I say one thing?
Yeah.
This planning board right now has been the longest established planning board, any board in this town that stayed together as long as it has.
And
God bless us.
Gerald, your sketch of how you would zone the town, it's over there in the file cabinet still, if you ever want to refresh your memory.
Yes, but the thing is like everything changes all the time. Nothing stays the same.
And I think that was the point of the comp plan.
Right, which we all agree needs to get back on track. We all agree with that. I don't think you can find anybody in town that disagrees with you, Paula. Jessica, you want to chat now?
I just have some questions. Wait a minute.
Sure.
No, I have.
Okay, I have a The proposed land use ordinance revision for industrial wind provides a 1,500 setback from a home or sensitive receptor on a participating or project parcel. However, the proposed land use ordinance would only require 455 tall wind turbine to be 910 from an abutting non-participating property line, 200% or 2 times the tower height. It would seem that these requirements illustrate how a developer's rights override an abutting property owner's rights by limiting the freedoms of an abutting landowner to develop or otherwise enjoy the property they own and pay taxes on. Can you explain the planning board's rationale behind this discrepancy? George Horton wrote in his findings regarding Bedford versus Clifton, it must be said that isocontour maps are much more than a technical submittal requirement of the land use ordinance. The isocontour maps serve a unique and specific purpose. Isocontour maps depict pre-construction background sound levels is no de minimis.
Not de minimis.
Thank you. Technical submittal requirement, but instead an essential to enabling the planning board to fulfill its responsibility of determining whether the proposed project will comply with the sound limits of the Clifton land use ordinance beyond 4,000 feet from any turbine. How does this revised land use ordinance determine pre-construction ambient sound values at an infinite number of locations not previously measured without these pre-construction isocontour maps? Judge Horton continues, at oral arguments, Pisgah's representative appeared to concede that if higher ground absorption factors associated with the terrain around the proposed facility were used, the results would not comply with the Clifton Land Use Ordinance low-frequency sound standards. This point actually reinforced the importance of isocontour maps. In the court's view, the worst-case scenario presented by Pisgah, seemingly accepted by the Clifton Planning Board, is actually a best-case scenario. Do the proposed revisions to the Clifton Land Use Ordinance consider the unique topography and geology of Clifton in relation to ground absorption factors and the effects to low-frequency sound transmission? In Judge Horton's own words, notwithstanding the Planning Board's evident willingness to overlook, excuse, and/or waive shortcomings in Pisgah's application, is the Planning Board satisfied that the proposed revisions to the Clifton Land Use Ordinance is crafted such that future planning boards will not be put in a position to overlook, excuse, or waive requirements, such as such actions could cause future litigation? Was woodchuck taken off the list of scenic resources because the planning board would elect a wind farm on woodchuck? If the planning board writes Paul Fuller's request for changes to the land use ordinance to be retroactive, what is the exact date these changes would be retroactive to? If the planning board is not going to take the time to discuss quarries, elderly housing, or dance halls before the vote in June, is the planning board only pushing for this new land use ordinance for the wind turbine facility changes? If it is not just for the wind turbine facility changes, why doesn't the planning board wait until the land use ordinance is finished?
All right, thanks, Jessica. Those were good questions. So, Jessica spoke. Paul spoke. John, you want to chat?
Yeah, I'll just speak briefly if that's okay with the board.
Sure.
In tradition, I'll say that so I can videotape.
Thank you.
This is the first time I'm back before this board just to listen to the good conversation, but I have been monitoring all the hard work that you've been doing. I really just want to say thank you. I know for being a volunteer board, and I'm sure the countless hours you put in, it's a monumental effort. The thing I want to emphasize, and which I think is very important that the board is doing, is in addition to having a very open and transparent process and gathering public comment, I think it's very important that the board consult continue to consult with its independent sound consultant on the wind energy aspects. And not to diminish at all anyone's intelligence on the subject matter, it just happens to be a very highly technical, complex subject that you really requires, in my opinion, someone who is schooled and has the requisite skills and experience in that particular area. So we haven't looked at the recent correspondence from Mr. Hessler, but we intend to, and we may have comments to provide based on that. But I think the board has made, and the town has made a great choice in, one, having an independent sound consultant in this round and helping it analyze what are the most appropriate changes to make to the ordinance that are really based on science. It's not based on someone's blog, it's not based on someone's, whether they're pro-wind or anti-wind. Really has some logical basis on the science behind it. And we just encourage you to continue on that path. And that's all I have to say for the moment.
Thanks. Good that you brought up the technical thing. I wrote it on the website. I just want to emphasize that clearly on both sides of the issue, there's people who are just outliers who just write stuff because they have an opinion or whatever, okay, and they're kind of separate that out from those people. But then as you kind of get more closer to the middle of people, there are quite a few people, and we have to acknowledge this, there's quite a few very smart people. And I did a few weeks ago, Paul, that guy from the, the scientific words for ears are at the moment.
Acoustic.
Excuse me?
Acoustic.
Not acoustic, the...
Audiology.
Audiology.
no, it wasn't audiology, there's even another word. But anyway, that gentleman, not ocular,
Oncologist.
no, never mind. I can't think.
Oto.
Excuse me?
It's otology.
Otology, that's what I was thinking of. Okay, there was an otologist from like the American Otology Institute or somebody like that or whatever, and he wasn't writing on behalf of the institute, he was writing on behalf of himself. And he had written an article indicating he thought that there were some, legitimate concerns about a variety of different frequencies of the sound in wind turbines. And there are many other, fairly intelligent people, engineers and physicians alike, who have written that there are potentially some problems. But what is difficult, from the planning board perspective, and sort of like, I guess, the missing link, for the most part, the major societies and the major government entities, who are the protectors of public health and the ones who are all, I guess, peer-reviewed, the peer-reviewed literature, like for example, the Australian Medical Association, they're indicating that there's no foundation for some of these problems. So while you do find individual physicians, who obviously they're not stupid, or you can't be a doctor and be that bad. You might lack some common sense sometimes, because we've always seen doctors like that, but nevertheless, they're clearly intelligent people, and they write that there's potentially problems. So you can't just say that the person, you can't just swipe it out. But if you compare individuals who have an opinion, about a particular thing, versus, entire organizations who say, and even NIH, talks about it not really being a big deal, okay? I mean, as far as some of these low frequency sounds, it's difficult if you're on the board side of this equation to accept individuals versus, large agencies and peer-reviewed organizations. I mean, that's where our issue is. Go ahead, Travis.
I admit that it is hard to accept an individual versus an organization, but I think most of us have seen and heard over our lifetimes things about power lines, and the individuals came up originally and saved things and people did not, and the big organizations did not agree, and over time things change and they say, well gosh, power line emissions do affect such and such. So even organizations which we trust will recant and change as new information comes to light. So it is very hard to decide. I'm just making the point that we really need to openly realize that we can't just trust just because it's an organization.
Right, but it's hard to find where the line is.
I agree.
And I feel like, from our side of the equation up here, you know, every time, you know, we bring up an organizational study, you know, we get taken to task for accepting the organizational study, you know, over an individual provider or engineer study. But still, as more of these wind projects get built around the world, it seems like there's actually more evidence, you know, almost monthly, indicating that there's not a problem than there was that there's a problem. I think if I was to take a snapshot in 2009, I could find probably more literature saying that there's a problem. If I took a snapshot today, I could find more literature saying there's not a problem. And I think that you could say that it's causal, that in 2009 people were concerned about it, you know, and clearly if you're building wind turbines and you're in that particular industry, you're thinking to yourself, if I don't solve this problem, okay, by A, making my stuff quieter, and B, by getting this problem worked out, I'm not going to make any money. So there's definitely, you know, you can easily follow the money. But if you were growing carrots, okay, and people were getting sick from your carrots, all right, I would say that you probably would say to yourself, I think I better figure out why my carrots are making somebody sick. Yeah. And then you're going to figure out, because if I don't stop making my carrots, don't stop making people sick, nobody's going to buy my carrots. So then you're going to figure out why your carrots have a problem. You're going to fix your carrots problem. Then you're going to talk about how you fixed your carrots problem, and you're going to sell more carrots, hopefully, because, you know, but I don't think it's any more...
Depending on the consequences of what happens to your carrots. If you kill children because they eat E. coli, you're going to end up with some big problems.
Probably you're going to have a little bit more substantial problems than if people just have an upset tummy. That's probably true. But the point being, you know, everybody just assumes that because there's a financial return that somehow there's some evil involved. And I'm just trying to make the point here that no matter whether you're making wind turbines or selling carrots, you know, there's going to be a financial stimulus to get your problem solved. Or else you're going to go hungry yourself. You're not going to get any bread.
Everything
just
does
saying.
have a trade-off. It's true. Everything does.
But anyway, I mean, we are trying to hear it. And again, I think in New Zealand they're like at 40 decibels, you know, but we're considering 35 decibels. So, you know, again, you know, probably the reason that we're going with 35 decibels, not 40 decibels, you know, because New Zealand has a huge wind program. You know, it's probably because of the Clifton Task Force on Wind. Because otherwise, if you weren't in existence, we could say, oh, we're going to go with 40 because New Zealand goes with 40. They have a huge wind program, and so we don't need to worry about it. But you're here, so, you know, you are being heard is the point that I'm trying to make. You might not get everything that you want out of it, but it's not like you're having no impact. And that's what I want to try to get across. I mean, you are having an impact. Just maybe not as much as you would like to have. There's a balance. Go ahead, Jessica, because you've been here right along. I really appreciate how many times you've been here, believe me.
Just going back a few seconds ago when you were saying we have a stricter setback, a stricter sound limit than New Zealand, and that you're protecting us because the Clifton Task Force on Wind has raised their voices.
Right, it was good that you did.
But that standard is going to be hard to enforce, correct?
Well, I don't think it's going to be hard to enforce it if it was 40.
Or just have the setback bigger.
But the setback is just a proxy for sound.
But it would protect people's property.
Well, let's just say that if, just academically here, okay, because I don't think it can be done, but let's just say that instead of the wind turbine starting out at 103 decibels like this particular one does, let's just say it started out at 80 decibels. So by the time it got to your property line, there's no possible way it could be more than 25, and it would only be 1,000 feet away. Would that be okay?
That's a lot to take in right now. I'd like to see it on paper, but
you know what I'm saying? I mean, because that's what you're telling me is that...
But you just mentioned the word property lines, and right now that is not in there.
Well, just say but you're telling me that the distance is more important than the sound.
I think the distance is easier to enforce than the sound.
Well, just because something is easy doesn't mean it's right.
Exactly.
Just because I'm tired, don't mean
What's the distance right now?
It varies based on a variety of things. It's like 4,000 feet for 35 decibels or 40 decibels, something like that. What is it like today?
After 4,000 feet, it right now is at 40 decibels.
4,000 feet is how long?
I'm really dumb.
Just shy of a mile.
and 4/5 of a mile.
So
I'll
outside
yes,
of
I
the couple of
promise.
houses that you guys have talked about, where's the next closest house?
Over a mile, I believe,
5,000 feet, just under a mile.
just under.
Is that my house?
No. You're over a mile.
Over a mile?
So what happens if somebody buys the place that's
I'll call you. Are you guys done?
I'm
Okay.
done.
Just want to make sure. Thanks.
And you guys are talking about houses. I'm not talking about houses, I'm talking about people's property. That is just as much of a value to me as my house.
I believe, I have to go look at the drawings, but I believe at Peter Becker's back line, it's like around 32 decibels. I know, but I mean, you probably wouldn't know the difference of 32 decibels. It'd be difficult to figure out what you're hearing at 32 decibels. So that's well under, I'll call you, Trez. 30, I believe that's the number. At the back property line, it's at 3,200 feet, it's like 32 decibels, roughly. But I mean, so it's already well under what some places think is perfectly acceptable at a house, which we don't think, by the way.
I